Okay, so we're out here on the water today, and this video is specifically made for all the owners of the old 2015 Shimano Metanium DC. And what we're going to do is we're going to see if there's any kind of improvement in casting compared to, of course, the new 2024 model. Because every time a new reel gets updated with a new model, everyone is usually wondering, you know, should I upgrade? Is the new model really better than the old one? Now, of course, Shimano is always going to tell you yes, but we're going to find out today out on the water if there is indeed a performance difference. Now, I'm going to focus solely on casting and maybe do some pitching, because everything else is pretty much just personal preference. I mean, some guys might like the fact that the old reel is bigger and heavier because they may have bigger hands, or maybe the old reel balances out with their longer rods. But I don't think you can deny that most people want the better performing reel. Now, full disclosure, yesterday I did take both of these reels out on the casting field, did a measured cast battle using braided line, and we're going to go over those results in the second half of this video. But in this first half, we're just going to cast around here and see if I can see a difference out on the water. So let's get started. Okay, so both reels are spooled up, and with the line counter I counted approximately almost 300 feet of line can be spooled onto the 24, while almost 350 feet of line can be spooled onto the old 2015. So you're looking at almost 50-foot extra line that you can mount onto the 100 size spool of the old reel. Okay, so we're going to start off with the old model first, and the lure I'm going to be casting is going to be the Lucky Craft Gunfish. I think this is the 95, and it should weigh just a little bit over 3/8 of an ounce. Now, since we're using monofilament, I put the internal line setting to in, and off camera I dialed down the external dial to the lowest setting it'll go that wouldn't blow the spool up, and that is number 3. So let me show you what the old reel can do. Okay, I'll do a few more casts. Pay attention to where the lure is landing. I'm going to try to aim for the same spot every time. But on this external dial setting, we get a nice clean overrun free cast. It's probably going, I don't know, close to 40 yards. Incidentally, spool tension is set to just minimize the side-to-side play. And we're hitting around the same spot pretty much every time. Let me see if I can eke out a little bit more distance. All right, that went out probably another 5 foot tops, but we'll talk about spool tension here in just a moment and address some of the couchcaster commenters. Okay, one more. And we have a wind kicking up from my left to my right. Let's see what happens. Nothing happens. The spool is perfect, and old reel wasn't too bad trying to walk the dog, but compared to the new reel, there's no comparison. The size and the weight of the new reel is way better, at least for me, to work lures like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the external dial down to number 2, and I'm going to show you what the spool does now. Okay, I'm surprised the spool didn't blow up. Previously the spool was blowing up. I guess I got a good clean cast, but you can see there was a lot of fluffing. Luckily the cast was long enough that it worked itself out. Let's see if we can do another. Now here's the thing, it doesn't look like the casts are going any farther. They look to be right around, 40 yards, maybe a little bit over. But going down to number 2 didn't really net us any noticeable distance increase. And that might be down to the overrun. Could be down to the fact that the spool is overrunning, kind of causing that friction, slowing the spool down. But yeah, with old Metanium, still very user-friendly. It's a reel anyone could purchase and start casting. Okay, so that was a clean cast. That was probably the farthest cast yet. But there was a little bit of a backwind. So two, if you're experienced with bait casters, you could go to the number 2 setting. Boom, there we go. I guess the line has settled onto the spool. But yeah, apparently we can go all the way down to the number 2 external dial setting on the old Metanium, just like I remember. So let's retry the new reel. Okay, so we got the new reel, same lure. And let's talk about the spool tension setting. Now, I'm going to show you a picture of the instructions that were translated from Japanese to English using a translation app. And it clearly says Shimano recommends that you set the spool tension just to remove lateral or side-to-side play. Now, in the initial casting video, I did leave just a hint of side-to-side play, but then I tightened it up. So for all the, I guess, know-it-all couch casters that left comments about, oh, you need to set the spool tension to where the lure just falls real slow, listen, I have more DC reels that I forgot I owned than you have clean underwear. I know what I'm doing. And if you're the kind of person that sets your spool tension like that, especially with a reel like this, it's like trying to go 100 miles an hour in a car but leaving the parking brake on. You might be missing out on some performance. So don't be scared and loosen up that spool tension. Now, this is something I do recommend for future and current owners of the new reel. Because of the silent tune, it is hard to, I guess, gauge when the side-to-side play is eliminated when there's line already on the spool. So I recommend that you set that spool tension with the line off and then spool the line on. Because when you're doing this, some of this line will shift. Because when you're trying to test that spool tension, especially with the Shimano reels that have the silent tune O-rings, some of this line will shift and it may not be as tight or as loose as you think it is. So I set the spool tension to just minimize side-to-side play, and we're gonna click the external dial to nylon, and let's start casting. Now, of course, I'm gonna do this off camera until I find the lowest setting it'll go to, and then I'll show you what happened. All right, so I've dialed the new reel in, and just like before, the lowest I could go to get consistent clean casts is maximum on the fine tuning. So check this out. Now I will say off camera, some of these casts were going out there around the 40-yard mark. Let's see if I can hit it for you guys while the camera's on. There's a long one right there. With these top waters, it's very important to time that wrist snap so that the lure cuts through the air clean like a bullet instead of helicoptering. All right, so hopefully you guys can see that the distances seem to be about the same. But with the old Metanium, I could go deeper into the brakes, meaning I could go lower. Now, does that prove to be some kind of a performance advantage? It looks like, for the most part, no. Let's do one more. Boom. So with this new model, Shimano kind of did what they did with the reels that they upgraded to the narrower MGL3 spool. Within the same brake setting, you can cast much farther, but generally you can't go as low on the brakes ultimately. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the fine tuning to number 4, and I'll show you what happens. That's what happens. So now there's a slight wind coming to my face, probably less than 5 miles an hour. Let's see what happens in the number 4 setting. Yep, this is what happens. So just like last time, I couldn't go past number 4. And right now, I mean, I can't even cast in the number 4 setting cleanly. I'll have to thumb it, which defeats the purpose of having brakes, especially fancy electronic brakes. It makes no sense for the so-called experts with quote-unquote trained thumbs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to thumb this cast, see if we can get a clean one and see how far it goes. I was burning my thumb up. Couldn't get a clean cast. We'll try one more time. Distance actually seemed a little bit short. So for all you guys who think that you impress people on the internet by saying you have a educated thumb or whatever nonsense, I assure you your cast distance is being affected by thumbing the spool. Here we go. Okay, so thumb the spool all the way through. Got a clean cast. Distance the same. Now I guess the question is, what if I do the whole spool tightening thing to where the lure hits the water and there's only a couple of loops, yada yada yada? Would I be able to go down farther and lower with the brakes to extend that distance? And that could be possible. And I might do that in a whole separate video where we just address this particular question. Well, as you can see, we gave the 24 Metanium a second chance. I spooled it up with the normal 10-pound Crappie Max monofilament I usually use. It was a fresh spool, and the exact same thing happened. Very limited accessibility when it comes to going low on the brakes to get more performance, at least in the monofilament mode. So in that respect, it doesn't look like this new 24 Metanium is going to be an improvement over the old 2015 Metanium. And obviously it appears that this new reel is somewhat, I guess, a dud. But what happens if we use this? Some 20-pound, 8-strand, cheap Chinese braid that doesn't even show us what the diameter is, and take both of these reels out to the casting field and do a cast battle with this. This is a lure that definitely needs casting distance. It's somewhat of a medium to deep diving crankbait that weighs a little bit over half an ounce. I use a 6'6" medium powered rod, and let me show you what happened. Alrighty, so before we get to these results, I'm going to just show you guys approximately how much line I was able to spool up on both of these reels of this 20-pound 8-strand braid. And using the line counter, I was able to get roughly 230 feet onto the 24 and a little bit over 300 feet onto the 15. So just keep that in mind. If you need more line capacity than that, then this 24 Metanium might not be for you. But let's get to these results. And pow! The new 24 Metanium absolutely destroyed the old 15 Metanium with an average of 160.92 feet, while the 15 Metanium surprisingly could only muster 138.65 feet. That was the biggest shock for me. I thought the 2015 would average at least over 150 foot a cast, but it didn't. But more telling were the brake settings. Now, both reels were cast in braid mode, of course, and the lowest I could go on the 24 model was 3 on the fine tuning, while on the 15 model I could go all the way down to 2. So are you seeing a pattern here? So it looks like Shimano actually did what I suspected they did with the new reel, and it's the same thing they did with all the other reels, that they upgraded to the new narrower MGL3 spool. If you cast both reels in the same brake setting, the newer reels with MGL3 spools will cast much further, but you're not going to be able to go down as low into the brakes. But in this case, it really didn't matter, because we're looking at, a 22 foot average distance between the two, and it could have been farther if I had used a longer rod. And I'll be honest, I was very suspicious of this braid, and I didn't cast at full power because I thought that this cheap Chinese braid could snap off. So yeah, let me know what you think of these results. Does this change your mind about the new 24 Metanium enough to make you want to quote unquote upgrade to it over the old reel? Let me know in the comments. But I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a preview to end this video off. I also brought the 2020 non-DC Metanium out and did a cast battle between it and the DC Metanium, and I'm going to show you the results of that in the next video. Alright guys, based on all this information, it's really going to be up to you whether you think the new reel is worth upgrading over the old one. But keep in mind when you're making your decision, everybody fishes different. Alright guys, thanks a lot.